Welcome to Uncensored Conservatism. This is episode 222, and we're continuing to look at the Constitutional Convention. The question is whether the executive shall be but one. I've thought about this, and the words of Mr. Randolph don't change my mind. His arguments against a single executive made a great case for a single executive. He sees the people as idiots and a single executive as a monarch. Our states have a single executive now. You won't find a plural executive in any state. A single executive cannot cajole, bribe, or influence itself, but a plural executive will do just this. This will poison the other branches, and then the states, and eventually the people. With a plural executive, the chances of not getting anything done only increases. So it's better to have a single executive. Yes, I've thought about this too over Sunday dinner. Wilson pointed out correctly that each state has a single executive, but he fails to mention that each state has a council of advice for that executive. Even in Great Britain, the king has a council of advice who hold great sway over him. Do you propose a council, Mr. Wilson? No, I do not. Councils don't solve the problem. They only provide a cover for bad decisions. It's easy to blame your council when things go south. Now, leave the South out of this. Oh, for the love of God, Pinckney, will you shut up? I can't for the life of me understand this three executive horse shit. You're creating a three-headed monster, especially in times of war. A vote was then taken and a single executive was approved 7-3. Now about this so-called Council of Revision thing. The judiciary should not be a part of it. These are the guys who are supposed to judge the laws, not make the laws. You're making judges part of the policy team. Why can't the executive just reject the law unless so many people vote for it? Just pick a number. I like this idea. Judges have to approve of the law as it comes before them. What if they help write that law? That seems hardly fair. All these ideas suck. The executive must have power to negate laws that they think are bad or impractical. Otherwise, you're making the executive a figurehead of Congress. You might as well just get rid of them altogether. The legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, they all must be independent of one another. And I don't like this idea of mingling them. I think the executive should have the sole power to negate any law passed by Congress. They'll only use that power under extreme circumstances. And since we've secured independence, the King of England has not negated a single law passed by Parliament, not one in 6 years. If the legislature is composed of the best men of this country, there will be no need for this ability to negate a law. Elbridge, I have the deepest respect for you, but I disagree. Here in Pennsylvania, the governor used his threat of negating a law to extract concessions from the legislature. Before they acted, they made sure there was money in the treasury to pay that governor. While our settlers were getting killed and scalped by Indians in the West, the governor refused to act unless the legislature exempted them from taxation. And Hamilton, you know why the King George hasn't negated any act of Parliament? He doesn't have to because they do his bidding. I fear there's tendencies here and in Great Britain. All this talk about power of the people, and now you're giving one man the ability to negate the will of the people. Really? No one person is smarter than all the people. This legislature will pass laws after careful deliberations, and now we're proposing a single executive can undo that with the stroke of a pen. I really thought we were better than that. Maybe if a certain percentage of both houses override the veto, then that would reinstall the will of the people. Even in England, the king cannot withstand the will of Parliament. I still believe the need to negate a law will be rare. If Congress knows the president has that power, they'll be discouraged from passing a shitty law. And Ben, your example of Pennsylvania makes little sense. The governor derived his power from the king, not the people. And Madison's idea makes sense in peacetime, but eventually the executive and Congress will be at odds, and the executive will just negate anything for the sake of it. I signed on to this idea of a single executive, but if I knew he had this power of negation, I might have thought differently. The power of the executive only increases over time. Does anybody doubt a Catiline or a Cromwell dwells among us? Are we to suffer strife and violence because of this? I'm against this check on the legislature and even this council thing. If we mark out the powers of this Congress, then everything will flow from there. Who can best determine the preferences of the people better than the people themselves? Well, I hear this idea of a single executive pass while I was taking a piss, but so now we're up to this council idea and the executive negating acts of Congress, eh? Yeah, you're creating a monarchy here, you know that. Y'all think the people will just go along with this, but I think otherwise. There's going to be this transitional period, and it is then when people will demand this monarchy. With a plural executive, these tendencies would be diffused. My colleague the other day brought up the example of Holland. But how did that become about? Go back a few years. The wisdom and bravery of the Prince of Orange saved the people, and they felt obligated, but he became oppressive, and then his family inherited his power, and incited rebellion. It wasn't the plural executive, it was the people occupying those offices. Then I suggest the executive can negate a law only for a specified period of time. What the hell would that do? Butler's idea was then voted down, and the veto override of 2/3 was approved. The question being whether there should be a national judiciary chosen by the legislature. Absolutely not. This is a silly idea. I can see it now, bribery and backdoor deals. Shouldn't the executive be making these appointments? You're proposing a single person makes these appointments? Again, monarchy. I think there should be a supreme tribunal, but not inferior ones. State courts have proven adequate to this point. We either do these appointments by the legislature or by the executive. In Scotland, the lawyers get together and choose the best among them, then divvy up his practice. It works there. You know what else works well in Scotland? A nice glass of Scotch whiskey. Pinkney, again with the comments. I oppose the idea of the legislature making these appointments. There's too much intrigue. Each state will only choose their own. Someone unqualified could become a judge, but appointment by the executive would also be troublesome. If Congress is involved, I suggest the Senate. Madison's idea passes 9-1. The idea of inferior tribunals should be discussed later. And when that day arrives, I intend to discuss the appointment by the legislature again. After a series of votes, discussion turned to the guarantee of a Republican form of government. This idea deserves greater debate. I want to see how representation will be determined before I vote on this. They voted to postpone the matter, and resolutions 11 and 12 were then approved. They moved on to the amendments. I don't see a need for this. You're wrong. Look at this as a grand experiment, and even in the best planned experiment, things can go wrong. Ain't that right, Franklin? I'm afraid I lost some hair in a lightning storm one afternoon. Hear to that. Once we get this thing down on paper, it may seem all tidied up, but something may happen. Who knows? Maybe a court will make a ruling, or there will be a tied election, or maybe somebody, who knows? Well, I still think it's unnecessary. We already have a way to change the articles. The National Congress approves it, then the states. You're wrong. I guess you didn't get the memo, but we're not reforming the articles anymore. I have a problem with leaving it to the people at large. In my state, there is now a movement to abolish our Senate. Many strange ideas emerge at the whim of the people. I'm not so sure there. The southern states ratify the articles through the people. They have no problems with it. And if we leave it solely to the state legislatures, they may not approve this since they'll be losing some powers. Some states will be selfish with their powers and not ratify anything that we come up with. Maybe we could come up with a number and then other states can come along later. I think 9 out of 13 is a good number. It's more than a simple majority, although I don't think Rogue Island will come along. The issue is then postponed. Tomorrow, let's get back to election in the first branch, but I want to talk about these inferior courts first. I don't see the need for them because our state courts can do just a fine job now. These federal courts will just encroach on the states and give everyone another reason to reject this whole thing. I disagree. If we don't have inferior courts, then the superior court will just be inundated with appeals. A government without a proper executive and judiciary would be a mere trunk with no arms or legs to move. Yes, I agree. Take the case of admiralty. That's of no concern to a state. And what about foreign ambassadors? There must be a national court system to deal with these issues. Again, I disagree. You're creating yet another expense. We have competent jurists, and they're called state judges. If we're to have a national legislature, it makes sense to have a national judiciary, and that legislature should have the option of creating that judiciary. Okay, so how about this? In Article 9, we give the legislature the power to create inferior tribunals. We don't mandate it. We don't create them, and the new legislature can do what they want. One problem. The people will never allow this thing encroaching on their state courts. It has merits and it sounds great, but so did things to the Athenians, and they eventually rejected the good-sounding things of their betters. About that expense thing, wouldn't solving problems at the lower levels be less expensive than endless appeals to a Supreme Court? Let's just vote on the damn thing. Madison's idea passes 8-2. It's getting late and I have some business to attend to. This meeting is adjourned. I propose that members of the first branch be chosen by the state legislatures. I don't really trust the people at large, and if we cut the states out of this, I don't think they're going to approve. It depends on the method of election. In England, the right of suffrage is restricted, but not here. I've seen in my state the problems of direct elections by the people. Scoundrels and dredges of the earth now occupy our lower house. Some of them are even criminals, and the same could happen in this national legislature. I don't want a monarchy, and I don't want an aristocracy. But the second branch must be men of merit. Maybe states can be divided into districts and names submitted to the legislature, who will then have a final say. Circumstances dictate a vigorous government, and you get that vigor from the people. The legislature should be a mirror of the people. If there is no representation, then we have anarchy. And I agree, too much democracy is not a good thing either. However, much of the mischief has been the fault of the governments, not the people. If the legislature acts in their interest, then there's nothing to fear. If Wilson wants to abolish the state governments, then that should be the choice of the people. But nobody wants that, so we must seek harmony between the state and national government. I agree we need a national government for defense, the regulation of trade, keeping the internal peace, and deriving some revenue. But in all other areas, civil and criminal, they need to just get the fuck out of the way and leave the states alone. People are just happier in the small states, and we need to somehow restrict the powers of this national government, which we are proposing now. The current confederation represents the interests of the states, not the people. If the people are to be represented, then they should choose their representatives. They must live among and think like their constituents. Of course, some scoundrels and maybe even some criminals may sneak through the cracks, but overall, election by the people works. In many cases where there is mischief, we see the state legislatures acting against the will of the people. At least one branch must be elected by the people. This is essential to a Republican form of government. Mr. Sherman doesn't mention uniform justice and protection of private rights in his needs of a national legislature. He believes factions will develop in the smaller states and to a lesser degree in the bigger ones, but I tend to disagree. All societies, despite the best effort, devolve into factions. The rich, the poor, the merchant, and the landowner, or even religious sects. Great Britain could have crushed our revolt had there not been factions in Parliament. In this country, the color of one's skin dictates dominion, yet the majority supports it. Creditors have defrauded debtors, and the landed interests have inflicted pain on the mercantile class. In a republic, this dynamic between the oppressor and the oppressed will always be, unless you rule through tyranny. The remedy is to expand the sphere so that these factions become subordinate to the good of the people, to the good of the whole. If you wish to wipe away factions, good luck, because it'll never happen. Madison lays out a good case. One branch must be elected by the people and the other by the states. This mingling of state and national is inevitable unless you abolish the states. But they cannot be cut from the equation, and the term of the senator should be 5 or 7 years so that they temper the excesses of democracy. The national government will swallow the states, large and small. We know the current articles don't work in many areas, but let's fix them first before we go down this path. Okay, how about this idea? One branch is elected by the people and the other by the state legislatures. This way, the people are represented individually and collectively. Now, I'm all for a strong national government, but I'll be damned if South Carolina will surrender her sovereignty. Mr. Madison there believes that people are a better guard against evils, but I'm not so sure about that. If you cut the states from the design of this new government, no state will approve it. I think Mr. Reed is being a little overly dramatic here. I see no reason why a state and national government cannot stand alongside one another as long as the state is restricted to local authority, and history has shown us his error in thinking. It is usually the small that swallows the whole in a confederated system. I move that we allow members of the judiciary to be members of the Council of Revision. I agree. No single executive will please everyone all the time. The firmness of their decisions will only be enhanced by this council with the backing of the judiciary. The system works in England, and it could work here. But an executive standing alone would be more accountable. Otherwise, they could hide behind the robes of judges. If the purpose of a unitary executive is accountability, wouldn't a council simply improve that accountability? Wouldn't they steer him away from irresponsible decisions? Listen, I originally supported a council of war, treasury, and foreign affairs to advise the executive upon their request. But then I thought, what if they're just little robots feeding the executive what he wants to hear and leading us into bad decisions? So I discarded the whole damn thing, along with including the judiciary. We are getting dangerously close to despotism. The sword and the purse should not both be held by either the executive nor the legislature. Most decisions will fall on the single executive. Any council will simply be advisory. By a vote of 7-3, judges were excluded from any council. Tomorrow, I want to discuss this negation of state law thing. So noted, this meeting is adjourned.